Got it. We'll cover some quick ground rules, just like we always do. Just remember, keep your microphone on mute until we open it up for Q&A. And once that happens, we'll go raise your hand, go down into the chat bar, or actually you can put a note in chat, or you can hit the reactions. We actually had somebody call me up after our last 1776 syndicate meeting, and they didn't know how to get their hand raised. So you go to reactions tab and little raise your hand down there. So you can always do that, and that way you'll get attention, or start waving on the screen. We'll figure it out. Please don't record the calls. We do that, and they will be available for syndicate members on the back end for posterity's sake. And we'll go from there. And as always, we never know who's going to be watching these kids, et cetera. So keep it clean, keep it civil. We don't want to have to censor anybody. So that just means be nice. We've got that. So I'm going to dive in here tonight, and I always want to start with a story. So I'm going to tell a story about grandkids and kids real quick. And I think all of us are going to relate, because tonight's call is on leadership. And the first thing I'm going to say is I get grandkids, and they get to come over after school. I get blessed to watch them after school a few nights a week. And they come over, and at my house, they follow my rules. I don't care what they can get away with at home. When they're in my house, it's my rules. It's like, okay, you need to hang up your coat. And this is what I get. I know, right? And before you go on to the next project, you need to pick up the last stuff and put it away. I know. That's what I get from the grandkids. And so my son, we're taking it now up into the 30s, right? So that's down in the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds. I go to the 30s, my own kids. And my youngest son was doing some mechanic work on one of his trucks. And what he needed was an impact wrench or a cheater bar. And instead, he reefed on it, and he spent about an hour in the emergency room getting the top of his middle finger, took the nail completely off and split it right down the middle all the way to the knuckle, right? So he knew he needed an impact wrench. And as I told him, I said, you should have used an impact wrench or a cheater bar. And he said, I know, right? So we're going to cover tonight. And the people watching this, if you're an entrepreneur, and even if you're not, what I'm telling you, what I'm going to go over tonight, I know what you're going to think. I know. I already know. So why are we going to cover it? We're going to cover it because we never stop being kids, and we never stop being adults who know what we should do, and we know what we ought to do, and we know what we need to do. Always do it. So we're going to cover leadership versus management tonight, and that way it's going to be fresh in your mind. And this is no different than marketing. We're marketing to ourselves. Top of mind awareness. If we hear this, we're going to maybe remember it, so we don't have to go to the ER or find 5 replacement employees because somehow we've run off all the other ones. So it's one of those things. I hope you get a piece of paper, a pen, take a couple of notes. You might learn something new. I'm going to cover a lot of ground. I'm going to blow through it fairly quickly. And then we're going to get to some question answers. And I hope all of you got my little assignment up front. Be thinking about the traits of your best and worst bosses, even if they're not your bosses personally, but you know of some. You've heard of them from spouses or people you've worked with. We're going to kind of cover some of that a little bit. So leadership, I stole this quote from Dan Bongino. He says, talk is cheap if it doesn't motivate action. And I've had managers that managed by cliche. You know, they were always quoting somebody's famous stuff, but they didn't know how to lead. They didn't know how to manage, and it was frustrating. But I know, right? They knew, I know. So first, is there a difference between a manager and a leader? Those of you who have run businesses before, I will tell you that there is a difference. A manager is a position. They are agenda driven. and they compel. A leader is an activity. It's not a position, it's an activity. It's vision driven, not agenda driven, and leaders convince, they don't compel. That's my summation after 60 years plus walking the earth and working for all kinds of different employers and being an employer. So why is it important to know the difference? I was thinking about this, and the first thing I did was I went to Google and I Googled top leadership books. Okay. And I went to the 25 top picks. And of those 25 top picks, most of them were personal development, interpersonal relationships, positive mental attitude, or management books. So what does that tell you? People who are looking for leadership skills, looking for leadership ideas, looking for leadership development are getting management tools and personal development tools. And I'm not saying there's no value in that. I'm just saying we need to really fine tune our focus. If what we're trying to do is develop leaders and leadership skills, we should be focused on that. And if we're not, we're going to fall short. We're going to fall into the management category and be working on agendas instead of visions. And that is important, especially for an entrepreneur. So I want you to think about that as we walk through the rest of this. So no matter what phase of the entrepreneurial process that you're in, you need to spend time thinking about those things up front. And so to do this, and this is like your ongoing homework assignment as you walk through the rest of this week. And it's kind of fun to start on a Monday, because now as you walk through the week, whether you're dealing with vendors, whether you're dealing with employees, staff, people in your everyday life, I want you to start breaking things down a little bit mentally. There are different types of leaders. We've got coaches, sports leaders. We've got politicians and activists. We've got celebrities and influencers online. So if you're following different people on social media things and trying to get something out of that every week, I know I do. Those are also leaders. You've got business and corporate leaders. You've got community leaders and civic organizers. I think most of our communities, we know who those people are. You've got religious leaders, evangelists, and pastors. You've got academic and professional organizations, union leaders, okay? You've got military leaders. Think of Patton and my all-time favorite, Genghis Khan. Families, matriarchs, and patriarchs. Think of your own family dynamics. Who really is the leader of that family? And it may be a combination of both, but just so you're aware of it and thinking about what is it they do to exude their vision and convince people that the way they want things done is the way to do it. So as you walk through your week, just be thinking about that. There are so many different areas to evaluate. And I spent a great deal of time while I was writing my book. I spent 3 years researching different leaders and trying to bust stuff out. But there's nothing like just observation and our personal experience. That's where we learn the most. And that gets me to my next segment in here. Can leadership be taught? I've gone to courses, seminars, and after leaving some of those, I was convinced at one point in my career that leaders can't be taught. Either you have what it takes or you don't. And as I got older, I realized that I was mistaken. Leaders, well, somewhat mistaken. I don't think leadership can be taught, but leadership and leaders can be developed. And that is where we get into the crux of things. That's when you start looking at what books are you going to read? How do you develop your leadership skills? Okay. So are they made? Great leaders lead by 4 things. And I wrote these things down just out of my own head, out of my own notes, out of my own observations. And I said, I think leaders need 4 things. And I read this a long time ago by somebody. It was a military general, and he said, leaders lead by instinct and circumstance. And it may have been Patton. Instinct and circumstance. And I believe that's true. But how do you develop your instincts? You can develop your instincts. Your instincts are developed by experience and study. And study can just be observation. You can learn from other people's mistakes. You can learn from what they're doing right. And that is going to help your instinct. So when you come up with a decision that you need to make, whether it's a financial decision for your business, or whether you want to expand, or whether you want to take on another line, or whether you want to take on another partner, you're going to have an instinct that goes along with it. But that instinct is something that you get to develop. Can't be taught in college. Believe me, you're not going to get instinct out of 4 years, 6 years, or 12 years of college. They don't teach instinct. So that's something you just have to press in and get. And circumstance, all that means is you've got to have a lot of time making mistakes so that you have your own experience. And then when you get into that crux moment, the real crux moment, that trial by fire moment, that's when you're going to further develop your own leadership skills. And you all have your own personalities, so you're all going to have your own leadership styles. And I think my evaluation of leaders really starts from my military background. And I know some of you have military experience, some of you won't, listening to this call. And not that that matters, but there are people in leadership positions that get to those leadership positions in the military strictly based on what they've done for an education and how they signed on. Okay, and that doesn't mean they're leaders. I mean, they're filling a leadership position, but it doesn't make them a leader. And you have to, I don't want to say kowtow, you have to respect that authority, the authority of the position. But I think all of us have had that experience of, I can respect your position, but I don't have to respect you, and that can be a tough thing to evaluate, but you cannot lose that proper focus of you still have to respect a position. I mean, that's what keeps us civil. You're going to have more credibility by respecting other people's positions, even if you don't respect the decisions they make. That's part of being a leader. And even the great leaders have struggled with that. You always want to go on the attack or the defensive of your own ideas, but the great leaders don't have to. They just move on. And getting into that defensive mode is dangerous. Which reminds me, real quick, I should mention one of the other types of leaders, and I didn't put this in my original list, and I thought about it later today. I thought, well, I should at least bring it up, because there are gang leaders, there are crime cartels, crime lords, and cult leaders. And they have charisma and all the leadership traits that great leaders have, but they can lead people astray. And we need to keep our eyes open for that too, because a good leader is going to know he may be up against incredible opponents out there. And not all of them are going to be playing on the same playing field that we are. So you have to have your eyes open. This is that challenge. I think it was John McKay, a couple of books I've read, the McKay Swim with the Sharks Without Getting Eaten Alive, and guerrilla marketing, those sorts of things. You have to be paying attention to everything that's out there. And it's not just the people, the people component. You have to be paying attention to all the other pieces of the puzzle, especially as entrepreneurs, what could affect you negatively in the long run, because all of those things are coming against you. You're not just leading your people, you're going to have to be navigating through dangerous waters. So just have a heads up. And I have first, leadership is exemplified. Here's a quick one for you. Leadership is exemplified by taking a stand or taking a risk when no one else wants to. Okay, that defines the leadership. Taking a stand or taking a risk when no one else wants to. And if any of you have listened to our initial videos introducing the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate, you'll realize that that's the same definition, dictionary definition of an entrepreneur. taking a stand, taking a risk when no one else wants to, and being willing to get the reward later. That's the vision component. So just being on this call, just dialing into this, you're already a leader. Entrepreneurs are already leaders, but we have to continue to develop those skills. And we can't let that slide. So a couple of my top traits, if anyone's taking notes out there, top traits to develop: your listening skills. And I can't think of anybody who can't improve their listening skills. How we relate and learn from other people is important, and the only way we can do that is to listen. And sometimes that means we just have to shut up and shut our minds down so that we can listen. Don't be formulating the next response while someone else is still talking. And that is an acquired skill. Second, appreciation. Appreciation of what? An appreciation of people, all people, because you're going to learn something from everybody. And also an appreciation for processes. You know, sometimes people say, oh, there's so much red tape, there's this, that, and the other thing. There's a reason for all that stuff. You know, whether it's for tax purposes or whatever, the government's trying to protect you from yourself, protect other people from bad businesses or whatever. Processes are there for a reason. So just have an appreciation for the process. If going through that process, you find a way to fine tune, or you find it's really antagonistic to your business, then do something about it. That's being a leader. You know, call the people who make those decisions. You know, your legislators typically, when it comes to things that inhibit business, but get involved. Appreciate the process, know how the process works, and don't be afraid to get involved to change it, especially if you're going to be in that business, that industry for a long period of time. Third thing, top traits to develop: your example. What you want to do is be able to clone yourself. Who's going to work harder than you in your business? You. Who's going to see the vision as clear as anyone? You. So you have to lead by example and exude that example to such an extent that everyone else is going to pick up on it. Next top trait, knowledge. Read, learn, listen to podcasts, join professional organizations and memberships like the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate. Press in and get the knowledge from the people that are like you, that are motivated by the things you're motivated by, that are doing the things you're doing, or who have done the things that you want to do. And the next trait is confidence. And that's kind of a two-edged sword, because the way you get confidence is building it. You build confidence by failure, and it requires faith in yourself, number one. Number two, it requires faith in your vision. And number three, it requires faith in the processes that you've built to achieve your vision. All three of those things together are going to boost your confidence. They're going to build your confidence. And when everything else is coming down, I'm telling you, there will be all kinds of turmoil when you're running your own business, or starting off, jumping through the hoops of getting a business off the ground. You have to be confident. You're not going to get the sale. You're not going to get the loan that you need. You're not going to get the expansion. If you're not exuding confidence, why would anybody want to jump on board with your vision? Why would they want to invest their time, money, talent, or effort in anything you've got? So to wrap up, leaders see a bigger vision than those that they lead. Leaders are willing to sacrifice for that vision. And leaders can convince others to follow them, even if those people don't see the vision themselves. That's your goal as a leader. None of those things are taught in management school. So great leaders have found a balance, I'm going to end on this, between being bold and being humble, charismatic without being conceited. And great leaders train other leaders. So I'm going to open this up on the floor. I want you to be thinking about, again, your best and worst boss. That's if you, unless you've got specific questions, and I'll take those first or in the interim. And if you would put your favorite leadership book, if you've got one, put that in the chat so we can actually send that out in an email to everyone else. If you've read some books that have helped you personally in business or in leadership, put them in the chat, and we'll spread the word out there as well. And then we'll go around the horn. Anybody who wants to raise their hand first, I want to hear the best boss, worst boss stories. And I know that there's got to be one from each of us.
Hey, Rod, I'm going to give them a couple extra minutes. Because,
you got one on already?
well, I got a couple of things I want to add to the discussion here. And I realized that Rod and I are so different in our style and teaching techniques. And I really appreciate his comments and his the method in which he's choosing to train tonight. First of all, I always want to be accountable to who I'm working with, and I always want to do a better job than they might expect. So I'm sitting here going, okay, are we delivering what these guys want on this call? But what I realized is that what Rod and I are able to give you is a damn fire hose of information, right? And the only way to get that fire hose is to do it bit by bit. And we've done a lot of pre-work to the syndicate, and there's literally pages and pages of what this is going to unfold as. So I guess what I would say is be patient in our process, because every call is going to have another little snippet of value that you're going to get through these calls as a whole over a period of time. And, you know, it's interesting. I read a book, and I love that Rod asked you to pop up a book. I read a book with the notion that if I get one quote or one piece of information out of that book, you know, even if it's 1,000-pager and it changes my life, then it was worth it, right? So if you guys get one thing out of this call each week, or maybe once a month, or maybe once every 2 months, it'll be worth it. I promise you. Some of you know I joined the Arte Syndicate. It's been a couple of years ago now. And I used to, well, I do exactly what Rod said to do, take some notes. And in the beginning, the first couple of calls, you know, I had my video off and I'm listening and I was kind of participating, but I was taking notes. But then all of a sudden they started striking some chords with me. I thought, shit, I'm starting to get something out of this. I didn't know it all. I thought I knew it all, but I don't. And I pulled it out as Rod was talking. This pad is filled with 2 years worth of notes. And what's cool about this is everything on here I can go back to and extract value, not only for myself in business and with you guys, but this is going to live on forever, even if those calls stop. So I would encourage you to take notes, regardless if it feels like it's relevant to you today or not. I recall listening to an RT call. It was all about hiring employees. Well, hiring employees is the last thing I want to do anymore in my life. I don't want to have a company that's got employees, but I've got clients that need to be coached on how to hire employees. So what I do is I flip back to his notes. I reference those. I reference my experience. All of a sudden, I've got a body of work that I can pull from. So again, I would suggest that you be diligent in your note taking and listening, regardless of if it fits your topic today or not. So when I'm thinking about leadership, you know, why do I care? I'm an entrepreneur. I want to make more money. You know, what does that have to do with paying my bills tomorrow or buying that vehicle I want, right? Well, leadership as an entrepreneur is one of the most important things that you can do, because leading by example, setting the pace, setting the tone, creating core values for your company, even if you're the only employee, it brings back your center and who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it. So leadership skills couldn't be more important than anything just about that we could teach on these calls. So to start thinking about leadership early in our relationship of the Y.E.S Syndicate, it's a really great place to start, Rod. So thank you for that. You know, and as he started with the story, I've got a little story for you guys that are thinking about maybe starting a company or having partners and what that means as it relates to being a leader. Now, when I was at Kettle One Vodka, I was the vice president of marketing. And as I transitioned out of there to start my own company, I thought, well, I need some partners. This is, my next job or my next role is going to be to start a tequila company. So I started looking for partners. Well, I found a partner in the vice president of sales for Kettle One. And we were aligned in some ways. And all of a sudden we decided, hey, we're going to have a partnership. We're going to create this business and we're going to go raise capital, which, by the way, we raised over $12 million of capital for that company. But what was interesting, despite his experience and the impression that I had of him in his role as the vice president of sales, I never really looked at him as an entrepreneur when I made the decision to partner with him. And what wound up flushing out about that is that my leadership skills started to elevate above his. And all of a sudden, I remember a switch had flicked. It's like, wow, I've kind of become the leader in this 50-50 partnership. And now, not from an egotistical standpoint, like, hey, I'm the one in charge, but I realized I better start leading because he's not going to lead me and I won't be able to be led. And so you'll find in your careers, and maybe you're working for somebody else, or maybe you're starting a business, maybe you've got a partner, that you're going to find natural leaders progressing through the ranks or progressing through the success of their organization or even your own business. Because without that leadership, it's not going to happen. And fortunately for me, in this particular scenario, my leadership skills that were inherent from some other jobs I had earlier on in life allowed me to become a leader and lead him through the fray of being entrepreneurs and all the disasters that goes with that. Like I said before, the dummy taxes that I've paid. So again, just kind of reaffirming what Rod said about leadership and the characteristics of being a leader, as he suggested, listening skills, and confidence by failure, things like that. But what I loved about what you said, Rod, in your bullet points, and guys, this is me wrapping up so you can come up with your questions. I see some books were posted, but I love that he said leadership is appreciation for the process. It's the process that helps us become better leaders because we learn from that, and the patience to go through a process and to learn the ups and downs of the cycle are to be patient and take good notes and not do the dumb things over again, right? So these leadership foundational training ideas and some of these books, Extreme Ownership is a great one, by the way. They're so critical, regardless of where you're going to go in your career or in your entrepreneurial journey. So those are my thoughts, Rod. I might have a question for you. These guys are starting to pop some stuff up, but I can't dual task. So I'm going to turn it back over to you as I think of some questions. Thanks,
Jim. I appreciate that. And it's funny how that worked out too, because we didn't come up with what we were going to teach on, what we were going to talk about. Those topics kind of just flowed out, on a piece of paper. And this was the first one. And the fact that it turned out to be leadership under train. And I took the first one was solely by accident. And the second one that's coming up, I'll have Jim talk about that later, but it's kind of ironic how the whole thing falls into place. But that you brought up a good point too, Jim, and that is, I want to know from the people on the call, what is it you would like to get out of each call? So put that in the chat or email us separately if you want. What is it you want? If there's a topic, we can work it around in our schedule if we need to. If there's something that what is it you want out of each call? And we hope to do anything and everything here. So it's a wide open course, and we want to learn from you as well. So don't be bashful. Don't be bashful.
With that, guys, this is something that I've been wanting to do, that we're going to do this starting in May, is we're going to have different contests throughout the year. So in May, I'm going to push out a contest in the beginning of May that I've been wanting to do for a while. And whoever wins the contest is going to win something, cool or different. But the idea is that we're kind of going to be pushing entrepreneurialism through some of these contests, our leadership or what have you. So something to look forward starting in May 1 for whoever our members are at the time.
Thanks, Jim. All right, who wants to go first? I want to hear worst boss story. Nobody wants to talk about a good boss, right? Let's hear about the worst boss story. Clayton, I see you're smiling. I can't see Palin, Will, I can't see your faces, but if you've got a smirk on your face or you're shaking or scratching your head thinking, oh yeah, I got one, I want to hear from you. Clayton, go ahead. And let's hear from you.
I had so many jobs. I can't count the number of us who have done something that have astounded me to the point of, did you really just do that? It's from the military to being a cop to being a salesman to working at a dude ranch. I've seen it all. I shouldn't say seen it all, but I'm still astounded every day. But I've seen plenty.
So of the bad experiences you've seen, would you put them in making a dumb decision or treating somebody poorly with interpersonal skills or business skills?
I've seen both. I've seen people that they just think they can treat employees or customers poorly and get away with it just by bullying them. Just poor, dumb choices, interactions with employees that should never happen. Ill theft. I mean, you name it. The gamut's there.
What was your takeaway?
You broke up on it pretty
Sorry,
good. I didn't hear it.
What was your takeaway from what you've learned from the bad experiences? I mean, you're in business for yourself now. Your wife's got her own business, and you've got aspirations. So we're talking about what of those experiences are you going to be taking with you?
I feel because I've seen a lot of the bad that I know what I don't want to do. I want to be that good boss that, you know, my employees can come to me and they can talk to me and be like, hey, Clay, here's what we're thinking. And they're not afraid to come to me at that point, that I'm going to bite their head off and say, get out of here with that nonsense. You know, I'm willing to listen to them. That trust between me and my employees. I want that. You know, just a good environment where everyone's happy to come to work. You're not just like, great, I got to go to work again, not looking forward to it. I don't want that. I want it to be a fun place. We have a good time. We can laugh and joke, and we take pride in our work, and we gain value out of doing it. Those are kind of all the things I look for a lot.
Clayton, I appreciate that. I took notes already, and there are two things that you brought up: trust, and I think trust it's actually on my note sheet for tonight. I had it right up on the upper corner here. Trust is key. Trust is everything. And first, you got to trust in yourself and trust in your vision, but trusting the people around you can be dangerous. And so you're making yourself vulnerable when you extend that trust out there. That is a tough one. And that's, I think, why a lot of employers sometimes have that guarded thing. You know, they've been burned. You know, they've said something in confidence. Somebody went into competition with them or sued them because they said something inappropriate when they were joking. Who knows? You know, being vulnerable and trust is really a tough one. It shouldn't be, but it can be a fine line, especially with employer-employee relations. So again, that's why if you are having employees, make sure you're following your own employee handbook. If you don't have one, you should talk to someone about why you need one and get it done right. But trust and then value, adding value. You should be adding value as an entrepreneur. We're adding value to the marketplace. That's what we get paid for, is adding value. And we need to add value into our employees, our staff, our families. We need to be adding value to all of those relationships. And if any of us stop adding value, we stop growing, our income's going to stop, and the whole system breaks down on itself. Entrepreneurship is about value, trust and value. And you hit those two core components right there. So amazing, isn't it? You dialed in on the top two. Will, I'm going to call on you, just like a teacher in a class.
Oh no, what
Unmute.
am I gonna do? So probably one of the, at least for me, bigger mistakes that I've seen, at least in terms of leadership, I would have to say is probably interpersonal relationships, or in many cases, lack thereof. One of the things that a quick C story. I used to work for a business where we had a wide, how do I put this? A wide variety of folks come in and work for us from all walks of life. At one point, we had a 17-year-old come in, universally liked, definitely worked more than some of the adults. Um, just really made it a true pleasure to be at the business and act like you could go to work and have fun. On their last day of work, I know for a fact that they never received any thanks for what they'd done from the owners of the company who worked like 20 feet from us. There just was a lack of appreciation, because appreciation can be a two-way street. She appreciated to have, a place to go work, but it just sort of felt hollow to just walk out the door and not even be basically told thanks.
Well, I will tell you, I'm quite familiar with some of the statistics on why people leave their jobs. And the number one reason is not pay, it's not benefits, it's lack of appreciation. That is the number one reason people leave their jobs. And for anyone out here who is building a business that will have employees, this is the cost to the business. And several different universities have done different studies on this, but it pretty much, it boils down to just about the same in all of them. It's 4 times the annual salary plus benefits of that employee. 4 times that amount is what it costs you to replace a trained employee. So think about that. You need to hire right, and you need to train right, and you need to treat them right, or it's going to cost you money. And I know as an entrepreneur, everything you make, you want to keep. You want to keep it from the IRS. You want to keep it from being spent on foolish things like recurring labor, revolving doors of employees. It's a huge cost to businesses, and most don't think about it. I can replace him. It's an employer's market. I had the best mechanic, in the shop, and he had a bunch of clients. I could find another one. 6 mechanics lined up to work here right now. 4.5, it's actually 4.5 times, but let's make it easy. 4 times the annual salary plus their benefits to replace, and all because lack of appreciation. So, Will, that's a good one. And it doesn't matter if it's a 17-year-old kid or, somebody who's been at the company for 30 years. Appreciation's huge. And that can just be, like you said, Will, thank them for coming to work. Thank them for making the job fun. It's small things, but it's huge. Palin, we're getting down to the wire here.
I've got a pretty quick one for you. I guess when I was younger, actually, I wasn't even of legal age to work, but I wanted to work. So I worked for a guy down the road that had a transmission shop, and kind of made me smirk when you brought that up. But this guy could fly off the handle with the littlest thing and scream and yell at the top of his lungs, and did it several times a day. So it was always an interesting dynamic around there, because you never knew what you were going to go home with, or how big you were going to feel when you did that. So that was probably a pretty big takeaway as a kid to see that, and realize what kind of work environment that makes for anybody, really.
So you said you weren't even old enough to work at that point in time?
Yeah, I wasn't actually of legal age, but I was pretty ambitious, and was always looking for, I wanted to earn my own things. And at that time, my family didn't have a whole lot of money, so that's what I needed to do to earn what I wanted to get. So I had went to work for that guy, and it was definitely a good learning experience. I believe I was 13 or 14 at the time. So
I'm going to dial in a little deeper on that, Palin, and put yourself back there as that kid. Those are your formative years, right? You still remember it. You even smirked,
oh yeah, I
right?
remember it well.
When you thought about it. I want you to tap into how did it make you feel, even if he wasn't yelling at you in particular, you specifically for something you did, but yelling at somebody or some situation. How did that make you feel?
Well, that, with that being said, you were always on eggshells or needles working there, even if it wasn't you, because you knew it was coming at some point if something wasn't right or the way you wanted it. So it wasn't a good learning environment either with that situation. So, but it'd make you feel about half an inch tall. So.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Again, we learn how not to be. That's the easy lesson.
That is
It's learning how to be. We have to be intentional about trying to pick up those skills and habits. And again, that's the reason for this call, and probably the reason for all of them, is to keep these at the forefront of our mind, because it can be easy to slip into our own bad behaviors, what we've known, instead of excelling, just coasting, and we need to be in the rapids. We need to be shooting the rapids. If we're just sitting around on calm water, we're going to get sunburned. We need to get out there and have some fun, get some exercise while we're working, work our minds a little bit and really be involved. But I encourage all of you on this call to be thinking a little bit more seriously. And when you go into a place of business, how not only how you're treated, but watch how managers are treating their employees. And if you see something crappy, I've done this before. I call them out. I've called them out, and it's amazing. I'll give you one last story before we wrap up. My teenage daughter, when she was in high school, she was working summer jobs, and she was working at a very busy. It's still around today. A very busy retail shop, touristy, high end. And when she hired on, she told them that she needed the last 2 weeks of summer. She gave them the dates. I can work up until this day, but after that, she had commitment. Go a dance clinic, out-of-state dance clinic, and then she wanted to have a week off just to enjoy summer. Just 1 week before school started. So she gave the employers that information when she hired on. And then 2 weeks before her time, she still gave her 2 weeks notice. And they said, well, we're in our busy season still, so you can't. And she said, well, no, I have other obligations. I have to. And they said, well, you're really putting us in a bind. You're putting us in a bind now. This is gonna, we don't know what we're gonna do. And keep in mind, this is a 15-year-old kid, and they're putting the whole burden of the success of their business on her. And she's not an owner. She's not a family member. She's just an employee. And she came home so distraught. And I said, it's okay. I said, you just go in there, you keep doing your job, you keep working, you give them all the value for what they're paying you, and tell them again when your last day is. And she did. And the next week they put her on the schedule anyway. And she said, Dad, what do I do? And I said, you're done working. You owe them nothing. You don't show up. She said, what if they give me a bad job reference? I said, then we'll talk. But there are people out there, and that's just it. As entrepreneurs, we're the business owners. We take the risk. We don't get to hire people to take that risk for us. We're all in. And if you're not all in, you're not an entrepreneur. If you're not willing to burn the midnight oil, if you're not willing to take the shift when someone calls in sick that's an employee, you're not all in. So plan for those contingencies is the other thing. All right, we're about 10 minutes from the official quit time here. Does anyone have any questions on any topic that we've covered or not? Wide open floor.
Rod, I'll fill some of your airspace for you, buddy.
Do it.
Yeah. So real quick, I actually had a story of a bad employer. You know, I spent 12 years working for In-N-Out Burger, where we were like a group of kick-ass warriors over there, hardworking. When I left there at 28 years old, I was making high six figures and decided I wanted to move to Lake Tahoe and take any job, didn't matter, just wanted to kick back a little bit. So I took a job as a buffet manager at a casino, right? That's all that was available. It's like $8 an hour, whatever. It didn't matter. And so I'm being trained by the manager of the buffet. And in casino world, a manager of the buffet is kind of up there, right? And at the end of the shift, she would go into her office, light a cigarette, put some music on, grab a soda or some food or whatever, just kick back and like do her thing. And we would chat. I thought, oh, okay. That's what you do at the end of the shift until the staff's done doing whatever they do, right? So I trained for a couple of weeks. And then when I was on my own, my first night shift, well, I don't smoke and I don't need to sit on the desk. So I actually wandered around to see what the staff was doing. And what they were doing is rolling silverware. And so I started talking to them and, nonchalantly rolling silverware. And then I sat down, I'm rolling faster and I'm helping and we're getting it done. And they're all ladies and they stopped me. They're like, Jim, what are you doing? I'm like, well, you got to roll silverware to get out of here, right? And they're like, yeah, but supervisors don't roll silverware. I'm like, well, this one does, because I'm not going to sit in the desk doing nothing. And the point of that story is, bad leaders sit at the desk and do nothing. Real leaders lead by example. They go out there and they get their hands dirty and they work with their team. And I was just thinking as everybody's giving their stories, oftentimes when you start a business as an entrepreneur, or if you're a manager or an executive where you have a team of people that are responsible under you, you never know where they came from. Maybe they came from a shitty leader and they just need to be taught some of the ropes or taught a different way because the only way they knew was from a shitty leader. So I think not only do we need to seek good leadership, be good leaders, but also be a little bit sympathetic for a new employee that maybe they weren't taught the right way. So I always try to teach people first and see where they go from there, but evaluate, make sure you evaluate. It's funny, Rod said all in a minute ago. And, the way we structured these calls is that he would do one, I would do one and vice versa, just like we do in our 1776 syndicate. Well, we're both all in with you guys because there's no way I'm going to sit out a call when he's giving it. There's no way I'm going to sit out a call, and vice versa. So anyways, we are all in as we're advising you to do. And another thing I'll say is this podcast is a lot like what you guys are aspiring to do, and that's become entrepreneurs, doing something different. Rod and I started this business 4 months ago, this idea on paper, and here we are doing it. And one of the things that you're going to hear me say often, if you haven't heard it from my podcast shows, is it's better to start than do nothing, right? It's better to get after it and get the business rolling, even if it's for 5 minutes a day. And I know we've only got a few people on the call, and I know we'll have a few others that will listen to this on the back end, but I'm thinking the value you guys are going to get right now is going to be so much more than a year or two from now when we got a lot of members, because Rod's calling you out by name. And we've got big goals for this group. And that leads me to what we're going to talk about next week. And that's going to be the coaching topic, and talk about values and how you incorporate those into your business and in your personal life to build your businesses or be better leaders. My values are this: God, family, health, give back, time to do those things, and then business being last. But what's interesting, in my opinion, my give back is doing these calls and creating this business to bring value to you guys. And I'm not going to go halfway in. I'm going to go all in. And Rod and I just had a marketing executive out here this last week to help us grow this business and bring more value from a marketing standpoint. So I look forward to growing this with everybody on the call and having many new members. And by the way, Will, call me and we can talk about podcasting separately from the group, because as many know, I've got 60,000 subscribers to my podcast, and I've been doing it for 3 years and have had a lot of success at that. So another value of the group is you are welcome to reach out to us individually as we have time to do that and grow what we're doing here. So back to Rod. If anybody had any questions, they're all his, or you can wrap it up, Rod.
All right, I will wrap it up. I'm going to end with when I wrote my book, the Warpath Alliance, and this isn't a plug for the book, but it could be. The quote that I started with is from Geronimo. And he says, everyone wants to be a warrior, but nobody wants to do what warriors do. And I could substitute that word warrior for the word leader or the word entrepreneur. Everyone wants to be a leader, but no one wants to do what leaders do. And everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but people don't want to do what entrepreneurs do. It takes a warrior mentality to get in here and do this. It does. You've got to be equipped and ready for battle. And whether you're just going out and branching out into something brand new, a new venture, whatever it is, we're here to help. So I'm fired up and excited. And look at this. I just got a great fucking love that quote, "Time to be warriors." I love it in the chat. Let's do it, you guys. I look forward to next week. Jim's going to bring the heat. I appreciate everyone on here. Reach out to us on email if you've got something that pops up during the week, and let us know what we can do to help. Appreciate it a bunch.